Hello, welcome to Jessie at Home Stitchopedia, and in this episode of our Stitchopedia we are going to learn a little bit about slip stitches. Okay, so here is the sample piece, the practice piece that you can make following the pattern in this post. If you are watching this video you did not get here through jessieathome.com, then on YouTube there is a description box right there underneath the video. And in that description box is a link that will take you to the blog post where you can find more of the information, and you can find the pattern, the instructions for making this practice piece. Okay, for this particular video and for this practice piece and for the video, I have been using Red Heart with Love yarn. Okay, I wanted something a little thicker that you could see really clearly, and I am also using a USJ 10 6.0 millimeter hook. You want to use a hook that is on the larger end of what you would normally use for your yarn. If you're using this Red Heart yarn and it's your first time doing slip stitches, you might even want to go ahead and go to a K hook. Okay, the last thing you want when you're doing slip stitches is to be making something way too tight. Obviously, if you're just doing a slip stitch to end around, then you just use whatever you're using. But I'm talking about if you're making a large amount of slip stitches or a garment made out of slip stitches or something like my slip stitch bracelet, you want a larger hook to do that that's a little bit bigger than your yarn requires. So we're just going to learn a little bit about the slip stitches. We're going to start off by chaining 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And of course I just put my sample down on top of my yarn so it's not pulling. Here we go. Okay, so now we have our chain 7, and when you're slip stitching into your chain, there's many options as to how you can do that. You can slip stitch through both of your top loops. These are your 2 top loops. You can slip stitch through just your bottom loop or the bottom bump. These are your bottom loops. You can slip stitch through, if you look at these top loops, this is considered your front loop and this is considered your back loop. You can slip stitch through the back loop and the bottom loop. Okay, there are various ways to do it. We are, in this instance, going to slip stitch into the bottom loop only. So, bottom loops. When you're working your slip stitch, we are going to skip the last chain that we made. So we made 7 chains. We're going to skip the last chain that we made, which means we're going to end up with 6 slip stitches. So, to make the slip stitch, we're skipping the last chain we made. We're working into the second chain in the bottom loop. To make a slip stitch, you insert your hook into the stitch, you yarn over, and you pull through everything on your hook. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through everything on your hook. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through everything on your hook. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through everything on your hook. Keep going to the end. Okay, we'll do another row so you can see how you work into an existing row. Okay, to do the next row, you always want to start with a chain. Okay, chain and turn or turn and chain, and now you're going to ignore the chain. Okay, we're going to slip stitch across this row. So we're ignoring that chain and we're going to insert our hook into both loops of the next stitch. If the pattern simply says slip stitch and it does not specify front loop or back loop, then you go ahead and go through both loops. So we insert our hook through both loops of the next stitch, yarn over, pull through everything on your hook. Insert your hook into both loops of the next stitch, yarn over, pull through everything on your hook. This is why you want to make sure you're not using a hook that is too small. It gets very tight and very difficult to do. And also some hooks have rounder tips, some hooks have pointier tips. You see how my hook has a pretty pointed tip? This is a Susan Bates, and they seem to have a kind of pointed tip. Some of them have really rounded tips. For slip stitch, a more pointy tip is better. Okay, I have some nice bamboo needles that have really rounded tips. I don't really use them for slip stitch. Yarn over, pull through. Okay, insert our hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, insert our hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through. We're going to do one more row, and then we'll talk about front loop and back loop, okay? So, to make your next row, you turn and chain, or chain and turn, whichever way, as long as you're consistent. And you now ignore that chain, and we're making 6, remember? So, 1 through both loops, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so now let's talk about front loops and back loops, okay? My attention is always better when I'm not doing this on a video. Murphy's Law, I guess. All right, so you can chain, turn. Now let's talk about back loops. Front loop, back loop, okay? Look at all these loops. These are all the front loops. These are all the back loops. As I said, you ignore your turning chain. So if your pattern says to slip stitch in the back loop only, that would be front, back. Insert your hook into the back loop only, yarn over, pull through everything. So let's move up a little closer. Insert your hook into the back loop only, yarn over, pull through everything. Insert your hook into the back loop only, yarn over, pull through everything. Back loop, yarn over, pull through. Back loop, yarn over, pull through. Back loop, yarn over, pull through. We'll do one more row of this, and then we'll do the front loop, which I think you can probably figure out, but that's okay. All right, we chained one and we turned. Okay, we ignore the chain. We're going to slip stitch into the back loop, yarn over, pull through. Insert your hook into the back loop, yarn over, pull through. 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 One more. This is 6. Okay, so now let's talk about the front loop. Chain and turn. Okay. Now if your pattern says to slip stitch into the front loop only, then you're going to do just that. Again, back loops, front loops, you ignore your turning chain, so we're going to slip stitch into just the front loops. We're going to insert your hook into the front loop only, yarn over, pull through. Insert your hook into the front loop only, yarn over, pull through everything. Insert your hook into the front loop, yarn over, pull through everything. Front loop, yarn over, pull through. Front loop, yarn over, pull through. Front loop, yarn over, pull through. And now we're going to turn, do that one more time, chain and turn. We're going to ignore our chain, and we're going to do the 6 front loop only. That's yarn over, pull through, 1, yarn over, pull through, and that's 2. Insert your hook into the front loop only, yarn over, pull through, that's 3. Insert your hook into the front loop only, yarn over, pull through, 4. Insert your hook into the front loop only, yarn over, pull through, 5. Insert your hook into the front loop only, yarn over, pull through, 6. Okay, so there we have slip stitching front and back. Now, we'll take one quick look at this sample that I made, and all the instructions are in the blog post. This section here is slip stitching through both loops. Okay, and first we did 4 rows, then I did 2 rows of one color and 2 rows of the next, then I did 1 row of every color. So you can see how changing colors will change the look. Okay, and if you notice in the picture, the main picture that goes along with this post, I show this next to itself on the front and the back, so you can see the different looks. So you can see that right here, see how this is all pink when we're doing the 1 row only of each color? When you turn it over, it's all blue. Okay, completely different look on the opposite side. So that's the slip stitching through both loops. This section is the slip stitching through the back loops only. And if we turn it over, completely different look. Slip stitching through the back loop only. Okay, now slip stitching through the front loop only. And turn it over. Different look. Slip stitch through the front loop only. Alright, so you can see those pictures better on the blog post where they're nice and pulled back and of course going this direction, which I just made you turn your head sideways, didn't I? Alright, so there you have it. You can come up with your color ideas and how you like your different, how you like the looks to happen. What I love about this is it's nice and stretchy, especially the front loop only or back loop only. It gives a really great stretch. I use that in my slip stitch bracelet. I use that in my slip stitch bow tie pattern. It gives that wonderful stretch, okay, which is almost like it's essentially, it mimics a nice ribbing from a knit stitch. I hope you found this episode of the Stitchopedia by Jessie at Home helpful. Thank you. Have a nice day.